Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz is coming up tonight, and I'm giving you a full breakdown, overview, and prediction of this fight. There's a few key points that everybody's missing. Stick around to see them. And of course, guys, subscribe to my YouTube for everything combat sports. I'm the MMA Casual. So let's get right to it tonight. 10 rounds of boxing between Jake Paul and Nate Diaz. Jake Paul coming in as a negative 440 favorite, and Nate Diaz is sitting at a plus 340 underdog. Absolutely ridiculous if you ask me. One guy has a lot of experience in combat sports, is so durable, so resilient, while the other guy, yes, has had a few good performances, is constantly improving. But let's not forget what experience can do in these positions. I got to give it to Jake Paul. I just want to start off by saying, hell of an athlete. Do I think he's a real pro boxer? Absolutely not. I think he's made huge advancements. He's had the time, the money, the resources to really be successful, and he's put a lot of effort and energy into this, and his improvement has been showing. But let's break it down, guys. I want to start up with Nate Diaz, a guy whose key points I wanted to get off right before I go into any breakdowns. His keys to victory are volume punching, always moving forward, and not showboating. Nate Diaz is a volume puncher. Nate Diaz is down to get down with you. He wants to go to war. He wants to be in a bloody fight. He cuts really easily. His face is filled with scar tissue, and you're going to see that. I believe he's going to get cut up in this fight, and he's going to be all bloody moving forward, and nothing's going to change. If you watch an Nate Diaz fight, it's so much fun. Just if you watch him against Conor McGregor, nothing is going to stop that guy from moving forward, and I think that's a key to victory here. I think if he's constantly putting pressure on Jake Paul, he's going to make him really uncomfortable. He's going to take Jake Paul somewhere he's never been, and the fact that he continues to strike with volume and move forward, I think it limits Jake Paul's ability to strike effectively, as he's going to fight moving backwards, something that Jake Paul is not used to. Jake Paul's last fight against Tommy Fury was almost a stalemate. He was very reluctant to get going. They respected each other very much so, because there was a lot on the line. There was a lot of pressure, and nobody wanted to be face down against the canvas. So this fight's going to be very different. Nate Diaz is going to apply that pressure. So I think one of the keys for Nate Diaz is to continuously apply that pressure and volume punch. Just make him really uncomfortable, get him tired. Jake Paul has a history of demonstrating that his cardio is not too good, and Nate Diaz is the opposite. Nate Diaz runs triathlons for fun. His body, his shape, I'm going to put up that picture. He does not look good. He's an older gentleman, but let's be clear, Nate Diaz in his prime didn't look good. His physique, everything, his muscle mass, his fat percentage, nothing looked good about that guy. He didn't look like this great fighter with a fantastic physique. No, he just looked like Nate Diaz, but that guy could go 10 rounds with you, and that's going to be really scary for Jake Paul as well. And the last key to victory for Nate Diaz is do not showboat. Nate Diaz has a history of trying to put on a show, and in the UFC we love it, and he's a gangster, and he's giving you the birdie, and he's doing a lot of different things that we love to see. Now's not the time to try that. We do not want to test his chin out against Jake Paul's right hand. He's a little older now. He's taken a lot of damage in his career. Let's not test these things out. So I think Nate Diaz, assuming he took this training camp seriously, he's going to come in there and he just wants to prove that Jake Paul's not a real combat athlete, and that Nate Diaz is, and his experience will come through. But I'm going to break that down a little further. For Jake Paul, I think it's a little different. I think his keys to victory is getting going early. I think Jake Paul's success is only going to be early, maybe the first half of the fight. After that, it's going to be Nate Diaz's world, and I'm completely confident with that. So he needs to get him out early. Jake Paul does not leave this fight with a decision victory, if you ask me right now, with the experience and the knowledge we have about Nate Diaz and Jake Paul. Another one is land the big shots, right? So he does need to be a little more calculated. He's not going to be volume punching. He does not want to get into a slipping match with Nate Diaz. He wants to find the opening, which Nate Diaz will give him. Nate Diaz takes a lot of strikes, and he needs to find that big right hand. That big right hand is Jake Paul's his key, his true key to victory. I don't think he's going to establish a good job against Nate Diaz, and if he does, it's not going to do anything. It's going to be finding that right hand. So when Nate Diaz is moving forward, I think he needs to be very calculated and just look for it constantly. Now, his movement, this is the biggest key for Jake Paul, obviously, besides that right hand actually making contact with Nate Diaz's face. He needs to be comfortable moving backwards, and I hope his camp focused on this. Striking backwards is not a very comfortable thing for many boxers, especially for someone like Jake Paul with the lack of experience. He needs to be comfortable with the pressure coming towards him and him still landing effective strikes. If for whatever chance he is unable to actually get into a groove while moving backwards or moving at all. Let's be clear, because he's going to be receiving the pressure end of this fight. I think he's not going to be successful. He needs to be comfortable with his movement. His slips need to be there. He needs to be okay fighting backwards, and he has to be able to utilize his power while moving backwards as well. Not an easy task. So just a few things I wanted to mention. Jake Paul landed 44% of his power punches against Silva. It was 51 out of 121. I think he could have similar success against Nate Diaz, maybe even a higher percentage, just because Nate Diaz has good defense, but when he gets going, he kind of doesn't care. Once he feels your power, he's going to absorb whatever he wants. And then Jake landed 30% of his power punches against Fury. And what I want to note here is 24 out of 79 punches. What happened and what I said was he was reluctant to get going. So one of the things that he needs to do is he needs to respect Nate Diaz, but he needs to realize if he does not get his power going, nothing happens in this fight other than Nate Diaz getting his arm raised. 24 out of 79 strikes. He cannot throw 24 power punches that land against Nate Diaz and win the fight. I am sure about that. I don't know what the odds would be of that, but I am almost 100% positive that is not his key to victory. Nate Diaz stats, some of the things I wanted to point out: 130 out of 223 total strikes versus Leon Edwards. So again, we're talking MMA, so there's kicks involved, but it's as good as I could do as far as striking goes, just to show his volume striking. And then Nate Diaz against Tony Ferguson, which was his last fight, ultimately was 101 out of 217. This is a guy who's constantly bringing the pressure, constantly bringing the volume, and he's very comfortable doing so. 3.77 significant strikes absorbed per minute for Nate Diaz, which is an uncomfortable statistic, and especially if he doesn't come in with respect to Jake Paul, I think that might be another issue for him. And then significant strike defense is at 52%, which again, it could be a little better. However, I think that Nate Diaz is taking this fight seriously, and it's going to go the distance. So my official prediction, you could see, I don't know if it came off as a little biased. I am an MMA fan. I am going Nate Diaz. I just think Nate Diaz is going to be able to exhaust Jake Paul, and I think in the later rounds he's going to be able to break him down and just keep landing punches, and he's going to end up just using Jake Paul's head like a speed bag. Now, if Jake Paul is able to do those keys, start off early, land a big shot, we might see Nate Diaz on the ground. Totally different topic. But there's been some speculation in the past that some of these fights are fixed. There's certain clauses in the contracts that might go Jake Paul's way than his opponent. I've never really thought so. I actually thought so in the beginning, but he was retiring. I mean, he was retiring exactly trash bags. He fought Ben Askren. He fought Tyron Woodley. He fought Anderson Silva, in his 40s. Now he's fighting Nate Diaz, who also is now retired from the UFC, still pretty active in combat sports because he fought, his last fight was last year. But these are all older gentlemen, and I guess I do believe that these are real. The only thing now that I do want to note that may lead to me being a little doubtful of the legitimacy of this is the fact that Nate Diaz is not promoting. And there's two reasons, and I think it's been beautiful. It's been masterclass. He walked away from an interview with Jake Paul and Ariel Helwani the other day. He just hasn't been promoting. So it can mean two things. Number one, he's focused. He doesn't want to give Jake Paul the time of day. He wants to go in there, just prove he's the better boxer and combat athlete. Or he doesn't want to promote because he knows the result that's going to happen. He knows that this is a fixed fight. Personally, I don't think Nate Diaz would ever be part of a fixed fight. I would be so surprised, so shocked, so hurt, really, because it's like, come on, man, you're like one of the OGs, but everybody does have a price. So I'm very curious to see what happens. Personally, I think that Nate Diaz wins in decision. That's my official prediction. I want you to let me know what you think. Leave it in the comments. And of course, guys, like and subscribe, share. MMA Casual to the moon. And just so you know, if you subscribe, you automatically enter a $100 gift card giveaway for my first 1,000 subscribers. Have a good day, guys. Let's watch this fight.